How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Dragon's Den. Today, I'm going to be giving you a deck tech for the Necrobloom. So, I'm going to preface this by saying that this is not a complete deck list of 100 cards. This is me telling you about some cards that are, in my opinion, must-includes in this deck, and having them in your list will 100% make your deck better. The reason I'm doing this way is I feel that a large part of the fun of Magic and enjoying Commander is brewing your own decks. But that doesn't mean you can't have a little help and a little advice. So that's really what this is. So let's take a look at the Commander to start off. It's the Necrobloom. It is 1 green, 1 black, 1 white, and 1 generic to cast for a 2/7 legendary creature plant. Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a 0/1 green plant creature token. If you control 7 or more lands with different names, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token instead. Land cards in your graveyard have Dredge 2. So the way that I would build this deck is I would have landfall synergies, but mostly I would have a extra land based ramp package so that you're able to play as many lands as you possibly can over and over again to get those tokens, to use them to sacrifice for Aristocrat style effects and value, and taking advantage of that. So with that being said, let's look at some of the cards we're going to have in here. Starting off with Wayward Swordtooth. Gives you an additional land on each of your turns, and whenever you have the City's Blessing, it's just a good 5/5 creature. Definitely worth running. Next is Exploration, the 1-drop enchantment that lets you play an additional land on each of your turns. Pretty straightforward, helps get those landfalls going. Next is Druid class. I think Druid class is an interesting include because it has a landfall synergy stapled onto it where you're gaining life every time you play a land. But then at level 2, it also allows you to play an additional land, so you're getting more of those land drop triggers. And then whenever it becomes level 3, target land you control becomes a creature with haste, and this creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control. It's still a land. So it can give you a really, really big creature to be able to hit something if you absolutely need it, or give you a way to turn one of your lands into a creature so that you can throw it to one of your sack outlets if you just so happen to not have any lands in your graveyard to use that dredge ability. Next is Oracle of Moldiah. Same thing, giving you an extra land drop, but also allowing you to play lands off the top of your library. So this, in a sense, could effectively draw you cards, as well as giving you that extra land drop. Dryad of the Elysian Grove also serves 2 purposes. It gives you that extra land on each of your turns, but also it color fixes you. So you'll be able to just play your spells, be able to turn your brain off, and just really churn out a bunch of spells. Definitely helpful. Very good in this deck, being in 3 colors. And Ancient Green Warden. While it gives you an extra land drop, which is also very good, that's the point. It also has reach, making it a very viable blocker, especially against flyers. And if it causes a landfall ability to trigger, it triggers an additional time. So now every time you play a land, you're doubling up on your landfall triggers. And I realize I got a little ahead of myself. It doesn't say you can play an additional land. It says you may play lands from your graveyard. So if you end up with lands in your graveyard and none in hand and you need to play them, which shouldn't happen because you'll be able to dredge your cards back to your hand, you can play them if you need to, but it'll really help you double up on those landfall triggers, giving you extra tokens to be able to sacrifice. So next we have some token doublers. So ways to be able to get more value out of that landfall trigger to give you more tokens to be able to sacrifice to kind of help fuel your Aristocrat style deck without actually having to sacrifice any of your actual pieces. So, O'Hare Talk, Deepest Foundation, it gives you 3 times the tokens. So play a land, get 3 plants, or 3 zombies every time you play a land. Mondrak, Glory Dominus, it doubles your tokens. So play a land, get 2. Play a land, get 2. Very simple, very straightforward. Anointed Procession, it doubles your tokens. It's an enchantment, a little bit harder to get rid of. Very good, obviously giving you way more things to sack. Parallel Lives, same deal, but in green. Doubling Season, same thing, but it also doubles up any planeswalkers. In fact, it doubles up any counters you would do. So it could end up being versatile in more ways if you decide to put planeswalkers in your deck, or if you decide to put some +1/+1 counter synergy or anything like that. Could be very useful. Next, we're going to work, how do we get cards back out of our graveyard that we dredge in there? We're going to start that off with Sun Titan. Whenever Sun Titan enters the battlefield or attacks, you may return target permanent card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So ideally, you want to get lands into your graveyard, and then you dredge them back to your hand. So every time you dredge one of these lands back to your hand by replacing your draw, you're milling 2 cards. So how can we make our graveyard an extension of our hand? Find ways to play the cards that end up in our graveyard. It's as simple as that, and Sun Titan helps us do that. So does Karmic Guide. And whenever you return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, that is any creature, no matter the power, CMC, anything, Karmic Guide does it. Revel Art, creature with power 2 or less, but also helps you bring things back. This can help you bring back your Aristocrats pieces, and it also just so happens to go infinite with Karmic Guide if you have a sack outlet. So you play Revel Arc. Say Revel Arc is on the battlefield. You play Karmic Guide. Karmic Guide, trigger on the stack to bring back any creature. Sacrifice the Revel Arc. Revel Arc comes, whenever it leaves the battlefield, return up to 2 target creature cards with power 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So now with that trigger on the stack, you sacrifice the Karmic Guide. So then Revel Arc's ability gets back the Karmic Guide, which gets back the Revel Arc. And you repeat this an infinite number of times with any sack outlet. Next we have Carador, Ghost Chieftain. He is just so we can play creatures back out of our graveyards that we dredge or help us rebuild after potential board wipes and things of that nature. Rise of the Dark Realms. Another thing that might be very good is mass recursion. If you end up dredging several times a turn, which you ideally want to be doing, then this can just help you absolutely flood the board in an insane way and just absolutely take over the game. Same thing with Command the Dread Horde. Just take everything in your graveyard, put it back onto the battlefield, and just sort of take control of the situation. Nyx Weaver is another way to kind of fuel both your strategies. So on your upkeep, you're going to mill 2 cards, filling your graveyard even more, and then you can actually pay 3 and exile it to put a card back into your hand. This can be things like if any of your instants and sorceries that may end up getting milled, like your mass recursion spells, or things of that nature, or something that might just be better, like using this to get back a Carador, say, to be able to get more things out of your graveyard, more value over time. So being able to get a card back is very good. Eternal Witness, same deal, play it, get one of your cards back that you really need, and you're going to be dredging so much. Eternal Witness can almost turn your graveyard. It's almost like tutoring, rather than just getting something back just to reuse again. Same deal with Timeless Witness. Does the exact same thing, but it's a 4-drop, and it has Eternalize. And then Shieldred. Shieldred is another thing that keeping it on the battlefield, you start dredging your cards, and it's just going to help you put creatures back onto the battlefield every turn while also slowing your opponents down, making this an extremely powerful card in this deck. Next is our ramp package. We're going to start off with Sakura Tribe Elder. So, sacrifice it, it's in your graveyard. Any of your effects that I just showed you can continuously get him back. You know, Sun Titan, Karmic Guide, Revel Arc, all of these hits Sakura Tribe Elder, meaning it's going to be very easy to play over and over again and just continue to get that value. Wood Elves is another thing that, like, you play it, get your value, sack it, and then you play it again out of your graveyard, find a way to get it back, do this over and over again, continuously ramp. Springbloom Druid. The reason that Springbloom Druid is particularly good is it's Harrow on a stick. And so you play it, you sacrifice a land, that gets a land into your graveyard to be able to dredge on your next draw step. So it helps you get land in your graveyard, and it ramps you. Same thing that Harrow does. You sacrifice a land, gets you a land in your graveyard that you can then get back and play whenever you dredge. So anything that helps get lands into your graveyard and ramps you at the same time is going to be extremely strong. Rolling Regrowth, it basically does the exact same thing the last two cards did. Then we want, what are our sack outlets? What are we going to be sacrificing our things to be able to get value? Our tokens. How are we going to be able to use our tokens to get value? And that's with our sack outlets. So first we have Ashnod's Altar. Sacrifice a creature, add double colorless to your mana pool. Pretty strong. Phyrexian Altar. Sacrifice a creature, add 1 mana of any color. So if these are one of your sack outlets with the Karmic Guide and the Revel Arc, you now have infinite mana of either colored or colorless mana. Warren Soul Trader. Sacrifice a creature. You pay a life, sacrifice a creature, and create a treasure token. Paying a life and is not the biggest deal in the world because so many of your Aristocrats cards are going to gain you a life every time you sacrifice a creature. So whenever you sacrifice, you're really just sacrificing a creature for a treasure rather than paying 1 life. And even in the worst case scenario where you don't have any of your Aristocrats pieces out and you might just be sacrificing a creature for some value, then paying 1 life to make a treasure is not bad at all. Altar of Dementia. It allows you to sacrifice a creature and mill your opponents, which this may not be super good with the plants. However, it's very, very easy to start making zombies in this deck because it's not hard at all to get 7 different land names onto the battlefield, especially if you're playing fetches and shocks, which in 3 colors is not a bad idea. And then your other regular non-basic lands and stuff that you'll be playing. So now every time you make a zombie, you can make somebody mill 2 cards. Super good. And Viscera Seer. So sacrifice a creature to scry 1 just to help smooth out your draws a bit and really just help you get to the things that you need to get to in order to help you win the game. Next is Blood Artist. And these are your, like, Aristocrat style. So things that are going to kill your opponents while you churn out your creatures for value. So whenever it or another creature dies, you drain somebody for 1. They're losing a life, you're gaining a life. So now you're sacrificing all your tokens that you make from your land drops for value, and you're killing your opponents in the process. Cruel Celebrant. It does the same thing. It drains people when things die. Same thing with Zulaport Cutthroat. And now Mirkwood Bats, on the other hand, is a little bit different. Because now, every time you create a token or sacrifice a token, each opponent is going to lose 1 life. So now, you play a land, make your token, they lose a life. You sack that same token, they lose another. Now your opponents are paying 2 life for every single token that you make and sacrifice. So that can be an extremely efficient way to just drain people out super fast with this deck when you're going to be making and sacrificing so many tokens. Next, we want to see what are some things we can do to draw cards better. And first is Liliana Dreadhorde General, saying whenever a creature you control dies, draw a card. So that's really good. So now you're sacrificing your tokens, you're drawing cards. When you draw cards, you dredge, you fill your graveyard extremely quick. So Liliana would definitely be one of the absolute strongest cards in that deck. And it has a plus for create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. That will be another token or several other tokens if you have your token doublers out to be able to sacrifice for more value and draw more cards. You can -4 it. Each player sacrifices 2 creatures. Help you take care of some pesky creatures your opponents may have, or whatnot. And then the -4 doesn't really hurt you because you just sacrifice 2 of your tokens and don't actually lose any of your important pieces. Or it's -9, which says each opponent chooses a permanent they control of each permanent type and sacrifices the rest. So if an opponent has basically every single card type there is in play as far as permanents are control, whenever you do this ult, they'll be left with 1 artifact, 1 enchantment, 1 land, and 1 creature, and maybe 1 planeswalker in most cases. So you're really just setting your opponents back way to the start, and you're just going to keep your engine turning. Next is Phyrexian Arena. At the beginning of your upkeep, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. Super simple, gives you an extra card on each of your turns, which means you're dredging an additional time every turn. Super good. And then Smothering Abomination. Another great way to just, whenever you sacrifice a creature, draw a card. You're sacrificing all your tokens. Every time you sack, you draw. Every time you draw, you dredge. It's just helps fill your grave insanely fast. Now, here are some creatures that, or cards in general, that are just, they're just good to have in the deck. So what I've went over so far talks about the main strategy of the deck of make tokens, sacrifice tokens, get value for sacrificing your tokens, and kill your opponents by sacrificing your tokens. Well, what are some other really, really good cards to put in the deck? Things that you might want to be getting back with your Shieldred or your Rise of the Dark Realms or something like that. Things that may not necessarily help further your strategy in that sense, but are just really big, good value creatures that you want to be getting back out of your graveyard using your reanimator type effects. We're starting with Avenger of Zendikar. Whenever it enters, you put a 0/1 plant creature token onto the battlefield for each land you control. So your commander makes plants, in a lot of cases will make plants. Avenger of Zendikar makes plants, and his landfall ability makes all of your plants bigger. So if you have a bunch of plants, and then you play Avenger and make a bunch more plants, and then play some lands, your plants get huge, you can overrun the game and win. Grave Titan. So whenever Grave Titan enters the battlefield or attacks, put 2/2 black zombie creature tokens onto the battlefield. Makes more tokens, sacrifice them for more value. Sack Grave Titan, get him back, keep making these tokens, growing your grave. A 6/6 Death Toucher that makes tokens, extremely good. Nim Deathmantle. Now, Nim Deathmantle is in here because it's part of a combo. It really enables Aristocrat style decks. So we already have Ashnod's Altar in the deck, and then Avenger and Grave Titan can also be comboed with the Nim Deathmantle to once again give you infinite creatures, infinite sacrifice, just over and over and over again, looping all these together to be able to drain your opponents or just make a bunch of creatures if you don't have any of your Aristocrats things out, and just give you a massive, just infinitely big board. It's a combo piece, and it works very, very well in this deck. Luminous Broodmoth. Whenever a creature you control without flying dies, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a flying counter on it. This is good because basically, say you have your Grave Titan or your Avenger of Zendikar out, you're like, okay, now I can sack these the first time for value, and they will instantly come back but be definitively better because they will have flying where they didn't have flying before. So you're basically able to sacrifice all of your big creatures or even your aristocrats pieces, and you'll get them right back to the battlefield, and they'll just be better than they were before, and you got value out of them by sacrificing them to whatever effect that you had before, to whatever sack outlet you had. So it lets you get everything back the first time for free, no worries. Taste of Karlov, very, very good in the deck. If a creature dying causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So now you sack your tokens. Blood Artist says, hey, I'm going to drain you for 1. Well, now it says I'm going to drain you for 1, but I'm going to do it twice. So you're just killing your opponents twice as fast. It also says creature tokens you control have vigilance and lifelink. So chances are you're going to be making zombies, and now you can freely swing those zombies. So you can swing them, get some damage in, you're going to gain some life off of it to pad your life total, make sure you stay protected. So the fact that it's a lord for your tokens and it helps your aristocrat style, Taste of Karlov, absolutely amazing. Butcher Malakir. Flying. Whenever Butcher Malakir or another creature you control dies, each opponent sacrifices a creature. So, okay, I'm going to sack my tokens. You guys all sack a creature for everything that I sacrifice. In most cases, they're going to be sacrificing things like their commander or other things they need to make their deck work, while you're not really giving up anything big, and you're just furthering that style. Butcher Malakir, really good. Dictate of Erebos does the exact same thing. Whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent sacrifices a creature. This can really, really help you just keep the board clear. Your opponents can't really play anything until they remove this. Mirari's Wake. Creatures you control get +1/+1 whenever you tap a land for mana. Add 1 mana of any type that land can produce. This is really good because it doubles up all of your mana. So now you're already playing all this land ramp, and then you throw out a Mirari's Wake, so now all of your plants are 1/2s or your zombies are 3/3s, growing your entire board a little bit to help you get some more damage out if you need to, and also doubling your mana, making it extremely easy for you to play bigger spells and just keep your engine running. Super good. And then we're going to talk about our removal. So, being in white and black and green, you have extremely efficient removal. So obviously Path to Exile is one that's worth running. You exile something for 1 mana at instant speed, they get a land. Swords to Plowshares, exile something for 1 mana, they gain some life. Beast Within, destroy any permanent, they get a 3/3 beast. Really worth it at instant speed, get rid of something. Anything that's better than a 3/3 beast with no keywords is easy target. This helps you get rid of artifacts, enchantments, things that just regular creature removal couldn't hit. Same thing with Generous Gift. It's Beast Within, but white. So, and they get an elephant instead of a beast. And Death Sprout. This is really good because you destroy a creature and you go get a basic land. So, kill something, get a landfall trigger. I get more value out of just getting a land and then just getting rid of your things. Death Sprout is really good in this deck. Binding the Old Gods ends up being the same thing. So you destroy any non-land permanent at all, and then on your next turn you search for a forest, so you get an additional land on that turn essentially out of your deck, so it's drawing you a card and getting you a landfall trigger. And then its third chapter is creatures you control gain Death Touch until end of turn. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. It can definitely make you have a big turn because you can swing all of your zombies that you don't really care about losing, and people may not want to block with the creatures that they have because the Death Touch is going to guarantee that what they block with is going to die regardless of what they have is bigger or not. Very good card in the deck. Next we need some board wipes. So Damnation, destroy all creatures that can't be regenerated. Wrath of God, same thing as Damnation but in white. And Gaze of Granite is the other one that I chose because destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost X or less. Maybe somebody's just got a bunch of tokens and that's what you're trying to take care of. Or they also have a bunch of little pieces. Or say you have your Grave Titan out and everything else is smaller than your Grave Titan or smaller than your commander or things like that, you can keep some of your stuff alive while also taking care of the threats that are ahead of you. Gaze of Granite is a very underrated card, very, very good, great in this deck. And next is our alternate win cons. So sometimes things aren't always going to work out the way you want them to. They may find a way to permanently get rid of your combo pieces by exiling them, or you just might be having a bad game, and you can't get all your combo pieces together, or you're just not having a good enough game that your engine is really running like it needs to, and you're not draining people the way you should. You're still going to be able to build a very decent sized board with this deck. So Overwhelming Stampede, easy way to overrun your opponents, and you can just outright win with damage. It is a backup plan. It is not the primary way to win with this deck, but it can help you finish things off if you can't get it done with your normal strategy. Triumph of the Hordes is there for the same reason, giving your creatures +1/+1, trample, and infect. Just another way to finish the game out if your normal strategies aren't working. Next, we're going to talk about the lands you need to be running in this deck. The fetch lands. I believe there's only one fetch land out of the 10 that you actually cannot run, and that would be the blue-black fetch. Every other fetch should have a color that lines up with one of the colors, so fetchers are really good because you play the fetch, you thin your deck out a little bit, and it gets you a land into your graveyard that you can then dredge back to your hand and do this every single turn, so every single turn you're dredging at least once. Fetch lands are very, very good in this. Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth. Each land is a forest in addition to its in addition to its other types. This is good because it can help you with color fixing. You know, if you have more swamps and plains out than you do anything else, you can play the Yavimaya and it'll help you have plenty of green, help you stay color fixed. And that's the same reason that Urborg would be in the deck, turning all of your other lands into swamps. Extremely good, help you color fix, and really just keep things going. So, Urborg is actually the last card that I'm going to be showing y'all. These are all cards that I think you almost have to include in the deck. Obviously, you don't have to. Commander is a casual format, and that's the great thing about it, is decks don't have to be built as optimally as possible to have fun. You can build on a budget and have fun. Commander is such an amazing format, and we're lucky to be able to play it. So, but these are cards that I think 100%, if you were trying to go for the most optimal build you possibly can, if you aren't building on a budget, you know, these are all cards that I think definitely need to be in the deck because they just help things run so smoothly, help really smooth things out and keep everything rolling. So, with that being said, I hope you found everything I told you here today helpful if you choose to build the Necrobloom when Modern Horizons 3 comes out. With that being said, I hope y'all have a wonderful time, and I'll see you next time.